Hello, welcome to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today I have got a first and favourites video for you. So I've seen lots of other book reviewers do this type of video or post on Instagram when they talk about their first and favourite book from a particular author, and I thought I'd give that a go. In fact, what I thought I'd do is actually have a series of first and favourite videos. I'm going to be covering authors, tropes and subgenres of romance, and I'm also going to do a Mafia Romance Monday edition of this type of video as well. So I'm going to space them out over the next couple of months, so if you like this type of video and this type of format, stay tuned for more. So today this is the author edition, so I'm going to be talking about 8 authors who I really love, and I'm going to talk about the first book I read by them and then my favourite. So the first author I want to talk about is Zoe Blake, and I first read a Zoe Blake book back in 2021. I just got into Mafia romances, dark romances in particular, and I was really hungry for, you know, these very alpha Russian men that are totally obsessive and possessive about their women, and Zoe Blake seemed right up my alley. So I first picked up a book called Savage Fowl, which was book 1 in the Ivanov crime family, and I absolutely love this series. I think from memory there's 3 books in this series, all following the kind of the Ivanov men and how each of them got their women, and this first book had me smiling throughout. The hero was completely over the top and insane. The heroine was feisty, but also Zoe Blake always writes kind of like very kind of spicy books as well. So it was a perfect blend of everything that I love basically. So in this particular one, like I said, it's a Russian mafia hero, so it's a Russian mafia romance. The main character, Gregor, is actually the head of the Bratva, so he's the Pacan, and he actually is due to be arranged in marriage to Samara. She's much younger than him, so this is also an age gap romance, and they're kind of getting married because they are uniting 2 families, but also it's because Samara's father owes Gregor a debt, so he's kind of taken her partly as debt, but also because he does actually want to marry her, or despite her being a lot younger than him. Now, as it's getting closer to the wedding, Samara really doesn't want to marry Gregor. She's heard some terrible things. She is quite afraid of him. She really doesn't want to be his wife. So she hatches a plan with 2 of her best friends to basically run away and escape before this wedding takes place. One of the friends stays behind, but another of the friends goes with her basically, and then they basically go on the run, and she manages to evade Gregor for about 3 years, and he becomes more and more feral as time goes on, trying to track her down because he's decided that she belongs to him. This isn't a real insult that she has managed to escape, and not only that, but escape for so many years. Every time they're really hot on her trail, she kind of like slips loose and disappears to another city. You know, he's enraged that she not only had the audacity to run away before their wedding, but also that he can't catch up with her. Of course, he is finally going to catch up with her, and when he does, all bets are off, I just love how this one played out, so really enjoyed this one. As a result, I went on to read much more of Zoe Blake's books, and she covers a lot of Russian heroes sort of connected to the mafia. But in terms of the favourite book that I wanted to bring up, I wanted to talk about her latest series, and the first book in that series, which was Scandals of the Father, which is book 1 in the Cavalieri Billionaire Legacy series. Now this one isn't strictly mafia, it's mafia adjacent, and this one is set in Italy, so I really enjoyed the setting of this one. Our main hero in this one, Baroni, he is an older gentleman, and he happens to basically be the head of this family and own this very old vineyard in Italy, and is a billionaire, and they make all of their money basically through selling their luxury wine. Now everyone in the area in Italy knows the Cavalieri family, and there's lots of like whispers and rumours about Baroni because his wife died several years before, and the rumour is going wild that he actually, you know, unalived his wife. And lots of mystery and intrigue around this family, but still, despite kind of like the dark rumours that are spreading about this family, the whole village absolutely love them as well, because they, you know, they're the source for the most of the employment. They hold kind of like annual parties, and they kind of treat the villagers really well, and so there's kind of like this balance of fear but respect for this family overall. Of course, Baroni is a typical Zoe Blake hero. He is over the top, possessive, wild, and when he first glimpses Amara, he is completely taken with her and decides then and there that she is going to be his and she has no choice. Now, how they actually bump into each other, because right at the start of this book, Baroni's son is actually due to be getting married, and so they're having the wedding at this vineyard, and they've called in quite a lot of people from the village to kind of like help out at this wedding, like serve food and like serve the canapes and all the drinks and everything. And Amara is one of those people. So she is a young woman that lives in the village, and she comes basically to the house to basically help out for this sort of wedding banquet, if you like. Now, while she's there, she actually overhears a conversation she shouldn't hear with Baroni's son and his you know, his wife, and Baroni kind of catches her eavesdropping and then takes her to his study to punish her for being an eavesdropper. And then from there, basically, he decides he doesn't want to let her go, and he's going to kind of manipulate her and keep her. It's scandalous, it is intriguing. We find out a lot more about this family, and then it kind of like starts basically this really, really sort of like underriding plot that goes through the rest of the books in this series. But this particular first book in this series had me enthralled, so would highly recommend. Then the next author I want to talk about is Emilia Finn, and I have not stopped thinking about the first book I read from her, Pawns in the Bishop's Game, which is this one here. I first read this in 2021, and it was actually my favourite read of the year. Now, I just started out on my Mafia romance journey, and I kept seeing this one on Amazon, and I thought it was kind of Mafia, kind of a Mafia romance, and that's why I picked it up. As I started to read it though, it really kind of like shocked me in terms of what this book was actually about, and kind of like how it all ended up. And mainly because this book itself isn't shocking, but because I was going in thinking it was a Mafia romance and it turned out to be something slightly different, then it kind of had me gripped and enthralled the whole way through. So I don't want to give too much away about this one, because I do think it works best if you're not sure what to expect. But I will say, although it's not strictly Mafia, it is sort of criminal underworld. So we've still got a bad boy in here, and all the attributes of a hero that we absolutely love. So this is actually book one in the Checkmate series, and we are following Kane Bishop, who is our hero, and Jess. Now, Kane Bishop is the kind of enforcer to this sort of criminal mastermind in their local town. And Jess is training to be a lawyer, basically. So she's almost finished all of her exams to be a lawyer, and she is working in a local law office, and they are really trying to get the bad elements out of the town. And so they've kind of started to compile evidence against this criminal organisation, and in particular they've got their sights set on Kane Bishop because they need to know more about him, and they think if they can take this enforcer down, then that will cripple the rest of the organisation, and they'll be able to clean up, as it were. And Jess is really desperate to prove her worth, to get her career off to a big bang, if you like, and then make some very dangerous decisions for herself about trying to find out more evidence about Kane Bishop, and decides to kind of like go literally into the hornet's nest. So kind of like the place of their operation is his sort of like nightclub in the seedy part of town, and she decides she's going to go there to see if she can find any clues. And this book very much opens with an essay, not by the hero to the heroine, but by somebody else. And Kane Bishop makes a decision to rescue her, and gets himself into a bit of hot water with his boss. And also then realises his mistake when he realises that he's just rescued the lawyer that is trying to take him down. And their romance really sort of goes from there. Now, when I first read this one, I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much that as soon as I stopped reading it, I picked it back up and read it again. Like literally back to back, I had to read this one again. And this story has never left my mind. I haven't actually read it in a couple of years, so I am very intrigued to read it again and see now, after I've read loads more sort of dark Mafia romances, if this one will still hold up. But if you read it and you have an opinion on this, I'd love it if you left a comment for me to let me know I'm not crazy, and this one is an absolute gem, a hidden gem, and I highly recommend you read it. Now, this was the first book I read by Emilia Finn, so this is going to be a very hard one to top. Like I said, it was my favourite book of 2021, and indeed it still remains my favourite. Now, I've not read all of Emilia Finn's back catalogue. She has got a load of books, like literally loads of them, quite a lot of different series as well, and they're all kind of like really set in the same area. They're all kind of spin-offs from one another. They're kind of next generational in some cases as well. So once you get into the Emilia Finn kind of like story, if you like, you kind of have to read them in order and then keep going. I didn't realise like I said, when I first read Checkmate, and I was going to carry on in this series, but I was so enthralled by this world that I thought I'm going to start right at the beginning of her catalogue, and then I kind of looked into her a bit more, and the very first series that she ever wrote was a series called the Rolling On series, which is set in the same sort of town where Pawns takes place, but focuses very much on this family who are kind of MMA fighters. They own their own gym in town. They're kind of world champions. And basically kind of revolves around them, people coming and going from the gym basically and falling in love with each other. So while Pawns is not only my first but favourite read from Emilia Finn, I did want to flag, while I'm talking about it, Finding Forever, which is book 3 in the Rolling On series, so her 3rd ever book. And this one features a couple called Jimmy and Izzy. The reason I love this one so much, because it literally ripped my heart out when I read it. It's really, really angsty and really, really sad, but has got such a great ending as well. And basically, Jimmy and Izzy have grown up as best friends. They've known each other all their lives, and they're really, really close. They're actually also madly in love with each other, but because their friendship means so much to them, they've kind of never told the other one how they feel. Jimmy's always assumed though that Izzy will one day belong to him, and he kind of saves himself for Izzy. The thing is, Izzy gets sort of sick of waiting for Jimmy to make a move, and also he, to all intents and purposes, he comes across as very much a playboy. So she doesn't know that he's been saving himself for her, and she thinks very much that he's, you know, been sleeping with a lot of women, taking advantage of his, you know, MMA fighter status as this world champion. And so she kind of gets tired of waiting for Jimmy, and she decides that she is going to have some fun of her own. The thing is, she very much picks the wrong person, finds herself pregnant, and then realizes her mistake, that she the person that she slept with is not someone that she can be with long term. And then she has to not only tell her family that she's pregnant, but she has to tell Jimmy that she's pregnant as well. And of course then he realizes that she didn't wait for him, and now she's pregnant with another man's baby. And then this is where the story kind of really goes, and it's so heartbreaking and sad, and you really, really feel the emotion between this couple. But like I say, it does get a happy ending, and I would definitely recommend the Rolling On series for sure. Okay, next up then we have Sarah Cate, and I first read a book by Sarah Cate in 2022. The first one I picked up was Praise, which is book 1 in the Salacious Players Club. This is of course an age gap, ex-boyfriend's dad. It's BDSM, so there's a dom sub relationship going on in here as well. The Salacious Players Club is a sex club, which our hero does own, so it takes place, parts of it, in a sex club, and it's also kind of a workplace romance as well. So lots of different tropes in this one, and I know a lot of people absolutely love this book and this series as well, as do I. So the main characters in this one are Charlie and Emerson. Emerson is our slightly older man. He, like I say, he owns, part owner of the Salacious Players Club, this sex club, and he is very much a dom. And then we have Charlie, who actually used to live with his Emerson's son. And at the very start of this book, they have split up, and they've moved out of the apartment that they shared together. And now Charlie goes to Emerson to get back the deposit for this apartment, basically, that he lent to his son, and now she is entitled to half of this money. Now, Emerson and his son are actually estranged from each other, so Charlie's never met Emerson before, and when she turns up to knock on the door, Emerson mistakes her for one of his women, thinks that she's a submissive, and makes her get on her knees, basically. She inexplicably goes along with his instruction and does that, but it's not too long before he realises his mistake, and that Charlie isn't one of his women. But Charlie is very, very intrigued by this encounter. And when Emerson comes to her and asks if she wants a job and to come and work with him as his personal assistant, she accepts, and then she becomes very inquisitive, not only about the club but the lifestyle, and kind of begs him to teach her what it's all about, and their relationship goes from there. obviously a bit taboo because it's the ex-boyfriend's dad and the age gap element as well, but a really enjoyable read. Of course, from there I went on to read the rest of the books in the Salacious Players Club, as well as some other books by Sarah Cate. She is a fantastic writer and I've enjoyed everything I've read by her. But the standout book for me in that series, actually I was torn between books 2, which is Eyes on Me, and Give Me More, but I think I ended up deciding that Give Me More was my favourite in the series. This is book 3 in the Salacious Players Club, and this is an MMF romance between Hunter, Isabel and Drake. So Hunter and Isabel are actually a married couple. Hunter is part owner of the Salacious Players Club, so they frequent the club quite frequently. They've been married for 10 years and have got a very happy marriage. Now, the extra person in their relationship here is Drake. He is Hunter's best friend. They've been best friends forever, and so they have spent a lot of time together. And really, although Hunter and Isabel obviously are the married couple, Drake spends quite a lot of time with them. They go places together, and they get on really, really well collectively as friends, and all love each other as friends as well. And Drake is also a construction worker. He owns his own company, and he has done a lot of work around the Salacious Players Club, setting up the rooms, designing the sets for the stage and things like that, and so has been, although doesn't own the club, he's been very, very kind of hands-on in the club, if you like. Drake is also bisexual. He's openly bisexual in this one, and so enjoys the pleasures of the club, shall we say. Now in this book, what actually happens is that Hunter, Isabel and Drake are kind of sent on a bit of a road trip to go and visit other sex clubs around the country. They're doing this to kind of like get hints and tips about how they can make their own club better, and kind of report back to the other owners. And as they're sort of going on this trip, obviously then they're spending much more time together in close proximity in the same accommodations together, and they also visit these sex clubs together. And while Hunter is talking to somebody one night, Isabel and Drake get invited up to the stage at one of these clubs to kind of like help with a demonstration. And when Hunter sees them together, he starts this idea in his mind that he wants to see Isabel and Drake together more frequently, and kind of pitches the idea to them and says, hey, how would you like to get together while I watch? And at first Isabel is like, oh, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure how it will affect our marriage. Are you sure this is what you really want to do? And Drake is also, you know, doesn't want to be kind of like the third wheel, as it were. He doesn't want to be the person being used for someone else's pleasure. And so they have lots of then really intense and detailed conversations about how they might get this to work, as well as Hunter coming around to some feelings that he has about Drake, and starting to realise that maybe he is attracted to him and loves him as much as he loves his wife, and then figuring out how they're going to make this polyamorous relationship work. So I absolutely loved it. Sarah Cate is so good at exploring the kind of emotional elements and having these really open and honest discussions about these sorts of things, and I absolutely loved it, so would highly recommend. Next up then, we've got Maggie Cole, and I've read quite a lot of Maggie Cole's books, mainly her Mafia romances, because she's got a fantastic Mafia romance series, but she also has some sort of like, you know, like contemporary billionaire sorts of series as well. And the very first one I ever read from her was called The Rule, which was book 1 of the All In series, and this one was kind of a workplace billionaire sports romance, because our main hero, Tom Marco, is a professional basketball player. He's a self-made millionaire, and the heroine in this one is a lady called Liv, who is kind of like owns her own PR business and kind of does PR for Tom Marco. Now Tom Marco really, really likes Liv, but she's got a rule that she doesn't date clients basically, and so he's been asking her out, wanting to you know, take her out on a date and stuff, and she keeps rejecting him. So he's trying to figure out a way that he's going to be able to get a bit more time with her and kind of convince her to you know, to date him, as it were. He eventually encourages her to come with him for the weekend to his Colorado mansion basically, and spend the weekend with him, and in the guise of it being about business. But really, obviously, he's there, he's going to seduce her. And so there's, you know, some really spicy scenes. Particularly, he's got like a sauna / hot tub out in the Colorado mountains. And so I did really enjoy that. And also, this has got a bit of a suspenseful element to it as well, because Tom Marco may be a great guy, but he also maybe has some enemies as well, putting Liv in danger. So I did enjoy this one, but I definitely think her Mafia romances were better, particularly the original Mafia Wars series. And so it wasn't too long before I was already on my Mafia romance journey. I particularly loved Russian Mafia heroes. So when I realised that Maggie Cole also had a Mafia series, and the first 5 books featured the Ivanov family, who are all Russians, I had to pick it up. And therefore my favourite book by Maggie Cole is this first book in this series, Ruthless Stranger. So it's book 1 of the Mafia Wars, book 1 of the Ivanov family, and now arguably there are some of the later books in this series are better than this one. However, this one will remain my absolute favourite. When I read this one, I absolutely loved it. I've read it a couple of times, listened to it on audiobook as well, and I absolutely love Maxim, the hero in this one. He is one of my favourite heroes in the Mafia realm of all time. I just absolutely love the way he cares about the heroine, who is Aspen, the things that he will do for her, and how sweet he is with her, yet how violent he can be when he needs to be to save the people that he loves. So what happens in this one, so this is basically an age gap. It's also kind of like strangers to lovers scenario, and this one starts where we are in Las Vegas. Maxim is there for a stag weekend for his brother, who is about to get married. He has booked in a different series, and Aspen, our heroine, she is just finally got divorced from a man she was married to for quite a long time, but had treated her really, really poorly. And so her girlfriends have basically convinced her to go to Las Vegas with them to kind of celebrate her divorce and let her hair down and, potentially meet somebody new and have a bit of a fling, have a fantastic weekend in Vegas. Now, they are talking about her fantasies while they're sitting around the pool, and Maxim happens to overhear what Aspen is saying about what she wants, and she describes the fact that she would like a night where she is with a stranger, that she's blindfolded, she doesn't know who he is, but she has a fantastic time. And hearing this, he basically goes up to her friends and says, hey, I overheard that she's got this fantasy. I would like to do that. I would like to be her fantasy for the evening, set us up. And of course they're a bit skeptical. They ask him a lot of questions. They make him leave his, his wallet behind with his driving license and all of that, just in case anything happens to Aspen. But basically they decide they're going to set Aspen up with this guy, this Maxim. Of course, he says the rules are clear. She has to wear the the face mask the whole time. She can't know who he is, but he will absolutely take care of her for the evening, and they do, and it's a very, very steamy, hot encounter that this couple have. So much so that even the next morning when they kind of Maxim has to leave, he can't stay away from her, and so they indulge in a second night, but still she is wearing this blindfold because he is a dangerous man, and although he really, really likes her, he knows that they can't take this any further, and he kind of has to leave her behind, and it would be better for her safety as well if she didn't know who he was. And so that is basically what happens, and he goes back to Chicago. What he doesn't know is that Aspen also lives in the same place as him. She also lives in Chicago, and she works for kind of this planning department at the council. And basically when Maxim is having trouble getting planning permission to build one of his new buildings, because that's what he does, they construct these high-rise buildings in Chicago, he ends up going to a meeting where Aspen is present, and although she's never seen him before, as soon as he speaks she absolutely recognises him. And once they know who each other is, Maxim cannot then stay away from Aspen and needs to bring her into his world. Of course, he is really, really scared that when she finds out the full truth about who he is, that she won't stay with him and she'll leave. And this does cause a little bit of conflict in their relationship. But like I say, Maxim is my absolute favourite Mafia hero of all time, I think. Or is definitely up there, and would absolutely recommend this book and this series as a whole. Right, then I want to talk about Sam Mariano. Now, by no means have I read all of Sam's books. I have read a fairly limited number of her books, if I'm being honest. However, I have read enough to absolutely appreciate what she writes and do have a first and a favourite to share with you. So the very first one I read was actually Descent by Sam Mariano, which is part of the Heaven and Hell kind of series of books that are written by different authors. Now, when I first read this one, I just read it because it was part of that particular series, and I read a number of books in that series. And when I read this, I didn't actually know who Sam Mariano was, in the sense that she was a dark romance writer and that she'd written some other amazing stuff as well. And as a result, I wasn't 100% prepared, I don't think, for this story and the hero in this one, Calvin, because if you've read this one, then you'll know that Calvin has psychopathic tendencies, shall we say, is very unhinged and very controlling. So I felt very uncomfortable reading this one. I wasn't sure I liked it, and it's probably my least favourite of all the Sam Marianos I've read. But I don't know if, knowing that it is a Sam Mariano book and I reread it, I would look at this one with fresh eyes. Maybe, I don't know. But I just remember not particularly enjoying this one when I first read it. What this one is about is a dark billionaire romance. It does revolve around a sex club, and there is non-con in here, so just be aware of that. Obviously, with Sam Mariano, you always have to read your triggers for sure. Basically, in this one, Calvin sets his sight on Hallie, who's our heroine. He kind of tricks her into going to this sex club where their encounter is definitely non-consensual. She kind of escapes and thinks she is free of him, but of course, in any Sam Mariano hero or book that you read, the heroine, there's always a moment where the heroine thinks she's got away, that this guy won't follow her, that she's kind of safe, that he's obviously got it out of his system now, and that he's never going to, darken her doorstep again. And of course, that couldn't be farther from the truth, because as soon as Calvin was obsessed with her before he got her into that sex club, but now he's had a taste of her, he is going to want to pursue her relentlessly and give her absolutely no choice about anything, to the point where, he pretty much blackmails her as well into doing exactly what he wants. Now, I have absolutely been loving the Coastal Elite series, and the last book I've just read, actually, Surrender, was also pretty good. I really enjoyed that one. However, the standout book for me, and it's probably quite a lot of people's favourites, is this one here, which is Untouchable. It's a standalone, it's a dark bully romance, and in this one we're following Cate and Zoe. So this book also starts with a scene, a non-consensual scene, where Zoe is sexually assaulted by our hero Cate. And the reason this happens is because they are all in a Texas high school. Football is obviously very, very important, and the football players and the team are also very important in this town. They're basically untouchable, as the title suggests. Now, Zoe has an awkward interaction with one of the football players and reports it to the coach, gets this player suspended, and then of course the rest of the football team, and in fact everyone in the high school, is not happy with Zoe at all, that she told tales about someone in the football team, and so they've been giving her a really, really hard time, until, like I say, at the very start of this book, she is kind of like shepherded into a classroom, cornered, and then Cate takes great delight in punishing her for her misdeeds, shall we say. Now, Carter's character comes across like, he's a bit of a psycho. He doesn't really have feelings. He is very manipulative, very sort of controlling, and really he has no interest in Zoe at all. He doesn't really even care that she dobbed in one of his teammates. He's just there for the fun of emotionally torturing this poor girl. Now, the way Zoe behaves in this situation intrigues Carter quite a lot, and he decides that she may be worthy of a little bit more scrutiny, and he decides that he's going to try and spend a bit more time with her, start to figure her out. Of course, Zoe is horrified. She doesn't want anything to do with Carter, and she tries to avoid him at every turn. But like I said, Carter is extremely manipulative, and he talks her into, convinces her repeatedly, blackmails her even into spending more and more time with him. Now, I absolutely love this one because we never get Carter's POV in this one at all. It's all told from Zoe's perspective, and that for me made it even more sinister because we never really knew what Carter was thinking. We never knew what line he was prepared to cross, and there was some moments in this book where I was like really scared in terms of how far Carter was going to push things. So it left me completely on the edge of my seat the whole time in terms of what was going to happen. But also how this couple would, you know, get to a place where they'd get their HEA because, you know, if Zoe was so determined to get away from him and disliked him, how was her feelings going to start to change where she was all in for Carter as much as he was all in for her. Lots of fantastic things in this book, lots of twists and turns, and if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend. So we've had a few dark authors, dark content. So let's do something a little bit lighter, and I'm going to talk about Elsie Silver. So I first read Elsie Silver back in 2022. I've picked up her very first book, Off to the Races. This one is book 1 in the Gold Rush Ranch series. Now I absolutely through this series. I read all four books back to back. I was on holiday at the time, and you know, as soon as I read one book I picked up the next book and I absolutely loved these. You know, this whole series is set on Gold Rush Ranch, so it's kind of a small town sort of cowboy sort of romance series, and Gold Rush Ranch itself is basically horse farm, if you like. They basically train race horses and have made a lot of money with their horses. Now, Vaughn is the main character in this one, and he's kind of inherited this farm, but he's got a bad reputation recently because there's some talk of, you know, race fixing and possible manipulation with these horses, and so he absolutely needs to salvage the reputation of the ranch, and he's also in need of a horse trainer. So he employs a person called Billy, who he assumes is a man, but when Billy turns up, Billy is in fact a woman. But they get off completely on the wrong foot because when she turns up for, like, you know, to either have a job interview or start this job with him, he mistakes her for a woman that his mother is sent because his mother is desperately trying to get him fixed up with a girlfriend and to be married off. And so he completely misunderstands who Billy is. Is very insulting towards her. It doesn't treat her too well, and instantly then Billy obviously takes a very strong dislike to Vaughn. But nevertheless, she really wants the job, and Vaughn is kind of like, you know, forced into giving her a chance at being a horse trainer. Of course, Billy is going to be an absolutely fantastic horse trainer, and in here we meet a horse called Dee Dee. Dee Dee is a kind of troubled horse that people have had struggled to work with, but they know once Dee Dee is kind of fully trained and accepting of her jockey, Dee Dee will absolutely be a winner at the races. And of course Billy knows exactly how to bring Dee Dee round. So for me, I absolutely love the romance between this couple. It starts off very like, you know, it's not strictly enemies to lovers, but they start off with a strong dislike for each other, and then over time they obviously fall in love. But the horse in this one, Dee Dee, absolutely steals the show, and so if you love animals, then I'm sure you will enjoy this thoroughly as well. So like I said, I've loved everything that I've read by Elsie Silver actually, but there is one standout book, and I think this is probably most people's favourites, and that is Heartless, which is book 2 in the Chestnut Springs series. So again, this is another small town cowboy kind of romance. This is also a nanny romance, an age gap, a single dad, close proximity romance. So quite a few tropes in this one, and absolutely fantastic. So our main hero in this one is Cade Eaton. He is the eldest Eaton, and he's got a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. You know, he's looked after his brothers, he looks after the farm, and also he has a son. So he is working himself to the bone, basically doing everything for everybody else apart from himself. Like I say, working really long hours on the farm, trying to bring up his son, doing what's right for his family. And so the summer is coming. Luke, his son, is going to be out of school, and he needs basically someone to watch him over the summer, and he's been really struggling to find somebody that's suitable, because there's quite a few women in the town where he is that would be more than willing to look after Luke, but really they're all trying to get into Cade Eaton's pants. He's a very eligible bachelor, he's a very handsome man, and he has had enough. He doesn't want anything to do with anyone who's trying to, you know, get him into a relationship or to get married. And so he turns quite a lot of options down, and he's left with very few choices. Now, the main heroine from book 1 happens to be best friends with a lady called Willa, who's the heroine in this one, and she suggests to Cate, you know, my friend is actually at a loose end this summer. The pub where she works is being renovated, and so she's at a loose end, and she could basically look after Luke for you. And so Cade very begrudgingly agrees that Willa can be his son's nanny. Now the thing is, they also get off onto a very bad start because they happen to meet in a coffee shop before she ends up coming to the ranch to see him and meet him and Luke, and they have a little bit of a meet cute in this coffee shop, shall I say. So when she actually turns up at the ranch, he is like, hell no, this woman cannot be the person babysitting my son, not least because he's very attracted to her and he doesn't want that kind of complication in his life. But nevertheless, he's out of options. Willa is available and she moves in with him and becomes the nanny to his son, and things go from there. It's absolutely fantastic. The chemistry between them is off the charts. Luke is absolutely amazing, and Willa is a brilliant main female character and would highly recommend. So next then I want to talk about Measha Stone. So again, Measha Stone is an author that I first read back in 2021. She mainly writes sort of short-ish, around the 250 page mark, erotic romances. They're also kind of like a dark edge, so again, very much like Zoe Blake, her heroes are OTT, possessive, alpha heroes. They're into sort of BDSM, lots of sort of like punishment, spankings, that sort of thing in her stories. But I first picked her stories up because again, I was looking for more Mafia romances, and she had a Mafia romance series called Mafia Brides, and the first one that I picked up from her was Taken by Him, which is book 1 in that series. So this is a dark Mafia arranged marriage situation, and we were following Dominic, who was head of the Polish Mafia, and then Kazia. Now Kazia was actually a twin, and 4 years prior to the start of this book, Dominic was actually arranged in marriage to her twin sister, but at the time she was only 16, so it was an arranged marriage on paper only, that when she kind of came of age, he would return to marry her, basically. Now the twin sister was sort of very meek and very scared, and Cassia was always very, very protective of her twin sister. And so when he comes back 4 years later to kind of like take Cassia's twin sister for his wife, they do a bit of a switcheroo. So they do a bit of a switcheroo, and Cassia ends up the one to be married to Dominic. Of course, when he finds out, he's not going to be too happy about it, but equally he's going to be happy about it because Cassia is a much more suitable wife for him than the timid, naive, innocent twin sister. And like I say, there's not much more to say about this one. It's a fun, fast sort of read, and I enjoyed it enough that I read the rest in that series, and then started to look for other books by Measha Stone. When I realised she had a fairy tale retelling series, I absolutely jumped on it because I love Beauty and the Beast, and I love Beauty and the Beast retellings. So my favourite book from Measha Stone is Beast, which is book 1 in the Ever After series, and as you can tell from the title, this one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. We are following Ellie and Ash. Now this is a Mafia adjacent sort of book. Ash actually kind of like is quite a powerful organised criminal, shall we say. He also sort of runs this kind of, it's not strictly a sex club, but basically he has women on his payroll. They entertain very influential and rich men, but what tends to happen is that they have there's this specific place where these rich men come, the women circulate, and then the men can pick these women to enter into a contract with them. It could be for just the night, it could be for the weekend, it could be for a month. So Ash is very, you know, the typical sort of Mafia sort of hero. He's hard, he's cruel, he's not afraid to use violence to get what he wants, and he doesn't like it if anyone double crosses him, obviously, or lies to him, or takes money from him. Now, because he's also a bit of a you know, loan shark, and so we first meet Ellie because Ellie's father of course, has got himself into a bit of trouble, and he's borrowed money from Ash and he's not been able to pay him back. So Ash basically gets the father and he's going to punish him, potentially end his life. And so Ellie comes to her father's rescue and says, please don't hurt my father. I'll step in his place, I'll work off his debt, whatever it is you want me to do. And Ash decides he's going to take Ellie up on this offer. Now she thinks she's going to have to be, you know, put in with his other women, if you like, and become kind of like an escort. But in fact, he decides that he's intrigued enough that he's going to keep her in the house for himself. And things go from there. So I really enjoyed this one, and it's probably my favourite, like I said, from Measha Stone. And then last but not least, I really wanted to talk about two of these books, and hence it's in here, although strictly I haven't read a lot of books at all from this author, and I only first read a book from her last year. I am talking about Pam Godwin, and the first one I read from her was Deliver. Now, I'd wanted to read a Pam Godwin story for absolutely ages. I knew she'd be right on my street. She is absolutely fantastic at dark romances, and so Deliver was the first one that I picked up, and I absolutely love this one. Rated it 5 stars. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Now, this is obviously book 1 in her Deliver series, which basically heavily focuses on kind of like sex trafficking and rescuing people from this kind of environment. And this first book, we are following Josh and Liv. Now, Josh is actually the person who is captured, and Liv is the predator who basically seeks him out, captures him, and then takes him back to a very shady property, where then her job is to train him to be the perfect sex slave, because he is to be sold to someone who specifically ordered him. So she's trying to train him to you know, be the perfect slave for this person who wants to buy him. But what kind of unfolds is a story that Josh is, you know, he knows who he is. He holds on to his self, he holds on to his beliefs, and he also very much realizes that Liv is very much a victim, just as much as he is. And he resolves himself to not only getting himself out of this situation, but to free Liv from her situation as well. So it's a very, very interesting relationship that this couple kind of like develop between each other, because he's her captive, she is sort of torturing him in a way, but also they're starting to get to know each other, starting to care about each other, and we also then start to uncover what's going on in the background, why Liv is there, why she is doing this, and who else is kind of the kingpin, if you like, of this particular situation. I thought this was gripping, tense, there were so many twists and turns, and I absolutely loved it. Like I said, I've read a couple more books in this series, and we'll definitely continue through because it's fantastic. So what is my favourite? So like I said, I've actually read very few, but I think so far my favourite has to be this one here, The Hills of Shivers and Shadow, and this is book 1 in a trilogy. Only books 1 and 2 are out so far. We're waiting for book 3, possibly. I mean, I loved book 2 as well, don't get me wrong, and book 3 is probably going to be even better. But for me, I absolutely loved this first book. Again, it had so much intrigue, there's so many clues in here, it's a real mystery that you kind of need to try and solve, and also it's extremely dark. So I just absolutely loved it. It really like challenged me as a reader, but also loved every moment of this story and trying to figure out with the heroine how she was going to get out of the situation she was in. So essentially what happens in here is that the main heroine is called Frankie. She has a husband and she lives in Alaska, and her husband is very, very wealthy, and they kind of like live on this kind of like island off the coast of Alaska. And she finds out that she is pregnant, and she tells her husband, and her husband is not happy about this at all. Her husband is called Monty. And they have a bit of an argument about it, and he goes off to work and leaves her alone on this island. And she resolves that she's going to wait for him to come back from work, and they're going to talk this out and sort things out. However, before her husband can come back from work, another man comes onto the island, and his name is Denver, and he's been watching and waiting until his opportunity to take Frankie captive. And this is the perfect opportunity, because if he takes her now, it's going to look like she's left her husband, and her husband isn't going to suspect foul play. And so basically he drugs her, takes her captive. They travel for quite some time, by boat and then by plane, and then eventually they end up in the, you know, the very far north of where she thinks is very far north of Alaska, in this very cold and forbidding place. Takes her to this very, very remote cabin. There's nothing for miles around, a very, very dangerous and forbidding kind of landscape, but they're not alone. And basically Frankie is brought back to Denver's place where also his 3 sons reside, and we have Leonid, Kodiak and Wolfson, who are all basically Monty's sons, and they are also there, and then things start to go from there. Like I said, this is very, very sinister, it's very, very cold, it's very, very dark, but I absolutely love this one because I just love all the clues that Pam Godwin laid out as we try and figure out why she's there, why Denver took her, how the sons are related, what they're going to do to her, what their plans are, and ultimately figuring out how she is going to escape. So an absolute masterpiece. Love this whole series, I would highly recommend. So that's all I want to share today. I'll do a follow-up edition of this with some more authors in a couple of months' time. But next month I'll be planning to do first and favourites for sub-genres of romance, and also I'll be doing a Mafia romance edition as well, so stay tuned for those. If you liked it, please give this video a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. So they enter into these contracts for, you know, a weekend, a month, or whatever. Yeah, this is book 1 in the Gold Rush Ranch series. Now this is all Zoe's fault completely. Let's victim blame here, shall we? No, don't do that. Don't victim blame. Try to stop it at once. Just stop it at once. Now I have absolutely been loving the Coastal Elite series, which you know, it is actually uncomfortable to read, but I did enjoy. And so she decides in some ways to get her revenge, or like to make him feel guilty or whatever. I don't, you know, something. I first read this in 2021, and it was actually my first, and it was actually my favourite. So I've seen lots of other YouTubers do something like this, either on. So I've seen lots of other influencers doing something like this, either on their Instagram channel. They probably do it on TikTok. I don't